Hi, Sam.
Hello. I'm on two calls at once, so I'm going to silence myself.
Hi. Oh, Senator Curry, you're muted.
Hello, thank you. We'll get started in just a moment.
That's fine. Commissioner Johnson's going to get on. She'll do the presentation. I'll be here to help answer questions too. But the one question we had was just about screen sharing. I sent a slide deck and whether she'll be able to share her screen to go through that. Is that?
That is fine. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. I'll let her know that.
Great. Thank you.
Senator Curry.
Mm-hmm.
This is Representative Collmore. I just wanted to see if maybe before we got really started, if I could just make a quick request to provide a little bit of feedback on how to, I use Zoom. I've been using it since before the pandemic, and I just have a couple of tips to help people if that's okay.
We're gonna be having a presentation a little bit more on Zoom. So with our OPAL analyst, Rachel Olson. So she'll be jumping into a little bit. So if there's something to add at that point, I'd just get my attention and we'll add it then. It might be covered
Okay,
at the same
thank you
time,
very
but
much.
I appreciate any, we're all working through it. So wonderful. Thank you. We are waiting for a few moments for everyone to get in to the room. So your patience is appreciated. Jody, before we get started, can you assist Representative Austin in renaming?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi there. I'm here.
Great. Excellent. Welcome back, everybody. It's 1 o'clock. We're going to get started. And good afternoon. And welcome to this Joint Standing Committee on the Innovation, Development, Economic Advancement, and Business Committee. This is our afternoon session. On the docket today is to hear from five key stakeholders across the state. We'll be meeting from our scheduled time is 1 to 4 today. And we'll be hearing briefings from key stakeholders from around the state. I want to remind some messages that we will probably get used to hearing and saying. Before we do introductions, I just want to remind everybody that everything is being live streamed on YouTube. And so as soon as the scheduled time for the meeting it hits, then that's when the YouTube begins. So if we haven't started meeting yet, and we're just chatting, just be aware that your camera and your mic are going out into the world. So please be careful of that. And just want to make sure everyone knows. I think let's see, that's very interesting. If you can look at your identifier, and I think it would be helpful to any guests that we have here on your identifier. I see that my title has dropped off, so I'm going to fix mine here. If you could put your title and your first and last name, I think that would be helpful. If you need any assistance with that, just let And that we do that by clicking on the three dots on the upper window of your Zoom screen and selecting the option of rename. Let's see. I want to remind everybody that we're going to be using the chat. The chat feature is not something that is shareable via YouTube. So no substantive discussions will be happening on the chat feature. It is for any technical challenges that we're facing. At this point, I'd like to ask folks to introduce themselves. And just before the meeting, Representative Robert sent out a list of order. So if you got that list and know the order, I'd like you to start. And if you don't know the order, there will be a pause and I will ask someone to introduce themselves. So if you could share your name, your district, and the towns within your district. And if Representative Andrews could kick it off, I'd appreciate it.
Representative Andrews from District 3 in Western Maine. I represent Buckfield, Hebron, and
And Representative Pepworth, go ahead.
Okay, I do follow Representative Andrews, but I am number 3. Here I am number 2. In any case, Representative Sarah Pepworth, I represent House District 133 in the Blue Hill Peninsula.
Hi, I'm Representative Amanda Collmore. I represent District 106, which is Pittsfield, Clinton, and Detroit.
Good afternoon. My name's Louis Lucchini. I represent most of Hancock County in the Senate.
I am Senator Scott Searway, and I represent District 16 in Winslow, Fairfield, Benton, Albion, Clinton, and Chip.
I am Representative Jack Ducharme, District 111, representing Madison, Norridgewock, and Solon.
Is Representative Austin with us? There you go.
The microphone.
Good afternoon. It's Representative Austin from Gray. I represent portions of Gray, my hometown, and portions of Raymond, Casco, and all of Fry Island, which is, to our knowledge, the only freshwater island town in the state of Maine.
Is Representative Hassenfuss with us?
Yes, sorry, I'm Representative Tavis Hassenfuss, Winthrop, Reedfield, and North Monmouth, House District 81.
Representative Kyle Bailey, House District 27, half of Gorham, and small part of North Scarborough.
Good afternoon. I'm Representative Sue Bernard of District 149, and that's Caribou, Westmanland, and New Sweden.
And I'm Representative Tiffany Roberts, your House Chair, representing House District 6, which is the majority of North Berwick and South Berwick.
And I'm Senator Chip Curry. I represent Senate District 11, which includes the 26 communities of Waldo County. Welcome, everybody. I also want to introduce and make sure we have 2 analysts, Sam Seneff and Rachel Olson, who are serving this committee, and we have 1 clerk, who is Jody Breton, and they will be with us as well. So at this point, I'd like to ask our clerk, Rachel Olson, to give us a briefing again on the use of the Zoom features, and specifically how to make sure, a key feature of committee work is being recognized to speak, and we want to make sure everyone knows how to go about doing that. Could you lead us in that, please?
I can. Hi, welcome. Good afternoon. I am Rachel Olson. I am co-staffing this committee with Sam Seneff. And we wanted to just go over the raising hand functions again. I'm going to share my screen. All right, and can you guys see my screen?
We're seeing your Windows screen.
Yes. Where did my Zoom window go? I'm wondering if I think that's what you are going to see because it will automatically pop. But I don't think it's going to affect this. For raising your hand, most people will find the option to raise your hand under the participants tab. Can you see that?
May I please be recognized, Senator Curry?
Sure. Yeah, Representative Collmore.
Just so that you know, Rachel, Zoom will not share itself on a share screen. We've tried that before and it does not show, so we will not see anything that you're doing.
Okay, then I'll just walk us through it orally. As Mr. Seneff mentioned this morning, at the very bottom of your Zoom window, you have a number of options. On the far right, you should see reactions, which is a little smiley face and a plus sign. On the newer versions of Zoom, if you opened that, you would find a raise hand option, and that would let the hosts know that you would like to speak. I don't have that option. I'm sure many of you don't as well. And you can find the raise hand option another way. You should see on the left side of that center option, participants, 2 little people, and then shows you the number of people in the Zoom meeting. If you just click on that, it will open a window, usually off to the right-hand side. It might pop out as well. And you'll see the list of participants. And at the very bottom, you'll find a couple of options, invite, mute. It depends a little bit on your function. And you should see a button to raise your hand. If you see that, you could nod to let me know, or thumbs up.
This might be a good opportunity to just practice that. Can people try to raise their hand? We want to make sure everyone has the ability to get recognized.
Yes, Representative Pepworth, that is an excellent point. You will have it either under reactions or under participants. Thank you. And we'll just make a note that you'll raise your hand and the chairs will recognize you. And when you're done, you need to lower your hand or unraise it. I'm not sure the terminology. And we'd just like to remind everyone about the role of the analysts from this morning. Just remember that we are nonpartisan staff. We're here to help everyone on the committee with your committee work. And if you have any questions, whether you think of them while you were on the break, throughout today or the coming days, please do not hesitate to either call or email Mr. Seneff and myself. We'll be happy to answer your question or to find out the individual who can answer your question. And we also wanted to let you know that we'll be emailing out the model committee rules, including the COVID addendum for you to review. And the chairs will talk to you about when we will be taking that up. Otherwise, I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Olson. So at this point, I'd like to move forward with the scheduled presentation by Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Johnson, can you unmute your mic? And you also have, I want to make sure that you've been given authority to share your screen. And so if our clerk can make sure of that, great. Thank you very much.
Senator, I believe Representative Collmore has her hand up.
Excellent. Thank you very much. There are 2 of us that are trying to scan everything. Representative Collmore, before Commissioner Johnson, 1 second. And Representative Collmore, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Hi, I just wanted to give a couple of tips. One of the things that I'm very lucky with is that I've been using Zoom since before we were all required to use Zoom for my job. A couple of things that might be helpful to people is if you have spotty internet connection or if you have digital internet connection, the best way to connect is through your phone. And if your computer drops or your internet drops, you stay connected to the meeting and therefore will not miss anything. It still comes up under your thumbnail because on your options, instead of connecting through computer audio, you connect through phone. It will still attach to your name so it doesn't detach from your thumbnail. And that was one of the big things that I think would be very helpful for people. Also, if I could just make a request that either somebody's there to let people in 5 minutes early or start the meeting 5 minutes or so late, that allows that time for that connecting of audio. I always miss the first 30 seconds to 60 seconds of a meeting because I'm connecting through my phone. Thank you.
Representative Collmore, thank you very much for those tips, and and your request is well received. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Johnson, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for being here.
Great. Thank you, Senator Curry. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm coming to you this morning from Representative Ducharme's district in Norridgewock, and am grateful to have the opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the work that we've been doing and talk more about how we look at kind of economic growth going forward, and where we are. So happy to the committee chairs to take questions as we go or to wait to the end, whatever is your preference. So please feel free to jump in if you'd like to do some Q&A along the way. So first, and I know we have a lot of new members to this committee, so it's wonderful to meet you, or to meet you in this environment at least. So we'll spend a little bit of time talking about who the Department of Economic and Community Development is and what we do. So our job is really fostering economic growth and diversification in Maine. We currently have 34 people on our team. We have one open role, and we have one role that is part of the curtailment process. In our department, we do business development. That includes obviously investment attraction. It includes workforce and trying to help our workforce meet the needs of our business community and really make sure that we are looking at, Senator Curry, do I need to admit folks? Somebody's just come into the waiting room. Do I need to admit people? Am I the host now?
No, you're not the host. We're certainly managing that.
Great. Okay, good. It's sorry, it popped up on my screen. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't leaving somebody out. So business development, again, business attraction, workforce, and productivity, really thinking about how do we grow value-added productivity, and we'll talk quite a bit about that as we go forward. We have real opportunities to increase the value of Maine exports, both domestically and internationally, but primarily domestically. The Office of Tourism is part of our work. Tourism obviously is a significant part of Maine's economy. We'll talk a little bit about the COVID impacts there, where we are, and what we'll look forward at. The Office of Outdoor Recreation, which was a newly created office 2 years ago, and that group has seen really significant growth. You know, if you look at kind of the impacts of COVID on the economy, outdoor recreation businesses are really flourishing. Cycling, bike sales are up 63%. Paddle sports are up 56%. You know, we're really seeing some companies in the sector be able to grow pretty aggressively. We do community development work. That's primarily block grant, federal funding for block grants, and those go to towns primarily for investments in infrastructure and other things that will allow them to attract economic investment. The Office of Broadband, obviously we talk a lot about connectivity. We were just talking about what happens if you don't have good connectivity, what happens if you're about to lose a call, how do you try to stay connected the most effectively? You know, I certainly think the pandemic has really shown the light on why connectivity is so important, and how we can use connectivity to advance everyone forward. Certainly companies are looking at real opportunity. We're seeing people make aggressive shifts to work from home. We've traditionally talked about work from home and telecommuting and all of that. And while some sectors have done it, this pandemic has forced us all to learn how to operate differently. obviously there will be operations that move back into more in-person activity, but certainly a lot will stay with remote as a possibility. And so it's a good chance for us to take advantage of that. The Maine Technology Institute does a lot of work around innovation. I think you're hearing from them later today. And the Maine International Trade Center is also part of our organization. And I believe you're hearing from them again later today as well. So it's a small group. I'm really focused on our economy and on diversification and really adding value to the economic landscape. So we started, when we started a couple of years ago, I came in with this governor and started to look at kind of what's the roadmap for economic growth for our state. And there wasn't a real plan. And so we did a lot of work to develop a strategic plan for the state, not for this administration, it's a 10-year plan. So it needs to be able to live throughout and across administrations, needs to be able to really be embedded locally in the communities. And we'll spend some time on the economic plan in a few minutes. We launched that economic plan in January, began implementation as well, because I believe really good plans are only really good if they're implemented effectively, right? I mean, we all have a lot of plans that just sit on desks and collect a lot of dust. This plan was designed to be implemented effectively. Obviously, our whole department, the 34 of us shifted and had to do a pandemic response in the last year. Would say beginning in toward the end of last year, really tried to sort of refocus at least large groups of our team onto economic recovery. And so we'll talk about the strategic plan in a little bit. I thought it'd be helpful because I'm sure there are a lot of questions, or at least a lot of questions on the COVID response and what kind of the team has done. Really worked on trying to collaborate with public health and the business community on protocols that would create the most capacity in businesses and keep people safe, and finding that balance. There is no right line to that, but that is ongoing work that has been happening. Really focusing on Maine businesses and trying to make sure they had the information they needed. We shifted into a number of different communication modes because what we found were people had different interests and wanted information differently. We started doing weekly and then monthly webinars. So thousands of people kind of have had contact with our department. You know, we had about 13,000 people through webinars, 20,000 emails, and about 6,000 calls. To give you a sense of that, in January of last year and February, we had 25 and 29 emails respectively. And then after that month, it's been thousands each month and up into the 3,400s in some months. So there was a real increase in the amount of information people needed, the amount of help businesses were looking for. We tried to create easy tools because there were federal packages, there were state packages, there were some local packages as well. And so we tried to create some tools that allowed people to find the resources that were most applicable to their situation. One of the other things certainly that we saw was there were some opportunities. While we have had some significant impacts around employment and people being displaced, we have had a lot of growth as well. You know, companies like Puritan and Abbott and IDEX that are able to be part of the COVID solution nationally needed workers. So we have had some opportunities, even if it's not a long-term transition for people, to at least create some opportunities for people short-term. And very early on, we started working with Maine Extension Partners, who I'm guessing is somebody that you will have in at some point along the process, and the UMaine R&D team to put together some innovation work to support businesses who wanted to make transitions and wanted to find ways to be able to still have markets or expand their markets. So companies that were making beer started making hand sanitizer, companies that were making other outdoor, you know, cloth type materials that were really good at working with those types of things, like Hyperlite began making masks, Flowfold had a lot of work with plastics, began making face shields. There are a lot of opportunities there for Maine businesses. So there was work there for the MEP and UMaine and us to work together to make sure people had the resources they needed, made sure they had accurate specs so they weren't building to specs that people wouldn't be able to buy, worked with hospital systems to make sure we understood what the needs were there. And we've seen a number of businesses really have a lot of success through that process. And then kind of what I would say is the fourth big pillar in this group is really standing up grant programs that were direct support. So the federal government gave some block grant funds to the state that were CRF funds. The governor allocated some of those funds to support Maine businesses directly. We had a number of programs. This is a roll-up. Certainly, there's a lot of detail that I'm happy to share with you if you're interested in it. But we issued 5,346 grant awards for $232 million. And that is about 4,677 unique businesses and organizations. What you'll see there is we tried to create a real cadence. So federal funds came out first, so businesses could apply for some of those federal funds. Those sustained businesses and kept some of them viable for a period of time. And then we released state funds right through this program, also kind of over a period of time to try to give people these steps. And there are new federal funds coming in as we speak for PPP and other programs. So again, kind of this ongoing cadence, recognizing, for some businesses, the impact has been substantial and it's happened over a long duration of time, which is very difficult for businesses to accommodate. This is just a quick look at how those funds, who qualified for those funds and where they went. I would say no surprise here. I think you'll see on the next slide, not all industry sectors have been impacted in the same way. Accommodation and food service has had the largest impact in our state, and we're the largest recipients of our grant funds. And so I think that's positive. That's what we wanted that to be. If you think about what we see are businesses who have high service related needs and or need lots of people in one place in order to be successful, live venues, live music venues, things like that. And obviously travel was a real challenge at the beginning. So you can see here, over 42% of the funds went into accommodation and food service. And again, I think that lines up really well to where the loss is. So some economic indicators, because again, not every sector was impacted in the same way. We also have a number of factors. When early in the pandemic, the governor and I met with the Boston Fed chair, President Rosengren. We had a real discussion with him about, what does this mean to our economy? How do we model some of this work? How do we know what's coming, or what should we expect? And his feedback was, we don't know. We don't have a model that works under these situations, right? We haven't been through this before. His feedback was get the virus under control as step one and get testing really ramped up so that you can test people quickly. And that those would be the two biggest factors in how our economy fared. So, early in that process, obviously, there were a number of studies from Oxford University, primarily was probably the primary one, that indicated because of the dependence of service industries and because of the age of our workforce, our economy would suffer more than other economies in the country. We've also seen now some that say that we fared really in the top kind of 10% or so. The reality is probably somewhere in the middle. And this is a long, the impacts of this will be long felt and long to recover from. And so I think it's too early to make, in my opinion, it's too early to make any of those decisions about where we fall today. We still need to keep focused on what we do know and what we are seeing every day and what we can change. So again, in this upper left box over here, we're seeing taxable sales from March through November. Lodging, restaurants, very, very highly hit. We're also seeing places like building supply. Some of you have sawmills. There are sawmills in a couple of your districts. They are doing actually really well, right? Home improvement has skyrocketed. Again, some of these rural communities that have rural tourism attractions, those were the activities that people wanted to do, that people felt safe and comfortable doing. And if we were talking to some folks in Greenville, they said they probably haven't had a better tourism season for years. But if you talk to people on the coast that were more kind of coastal and generally densely populated beach communities, they really struggled. So you'll see real differences even within sectors. And so we use these as benchmarks, right? Just to keep kind of thinking about where are the impacts, what do we need to do to keep infrastructure as whole as possible. But again, there's even more to the story than these higher levels. So if you look at changing consumer spending in Maine, kind of year over year, which is about where we are now, is down about 1.4%. Nationally, it's down about 2.8%. So the good news is durable goods are up in Maine, and that disposable income is holding reasonably steady, so people are still able to be spending. I think we have a lot of work to do as a state on ensuring that people are spending that money on Maine businesses and getting those goods and services from Maine businesses. So there's real opportunity there. But there's some good news there as well. The bottom left really looks at kind of this change in wage. So unemployment in December was about 5%. As you all know, going into the pandemic, it was down in the 2.5%, with workforce participation rates actually being pretty high over most of the state. We had a couple of counties with workforce participation challenges, but for most of the state, both unemployment was low and workforce participation was high, which is exactly what you want in your economy, right? To continue to grow productivity. Now we're seeing unemployment be a little bit higher. We're seeing workforce participation rates go down a little bit. But again, the job impacts match the chart above it, right? So what it's saying is we're not right-sizing our workforce. This is directly related to the pandemic and the response to the pandemic, which gives it a little bit more elasticity. And then obviously some real concern in small business revenue and how that's playing out. So all of those concerns lead us back to what do we go do, and where do we, how do we look at recovery? How do we think about what's next? We talked a little bit about the strategic plan, which is this document over here. I believe you all have a copy of that, but I'm not sure if they got mailed out to you. So if any of you don't have your hands on it, we can certainly get a PDF to you, and we're happy to mail real copies out as well. Again, that document was built to be a roadmap because good economic development happens locally. And we wanted to get all of the local investment that's happening working together, and not everybody off kind of doing their own little pieces, but not having any real leverage. So the strategic plan was developed for that purpose. It's been almost a year now. I think what we would say is it's more important now than it's ever been. But we're certainly starting from a different baseline than we were when we were writing this document. We're writing this document. The biggest challenge we had was not enough people, right? We didn't have enough people in the workforce. We were seeing aggressive outmigration in rural communities. And those were kind of the two big pieces, and innovation was really a solution to that. And if you look at the amount of money on innovation in Maine, we're considerably behind. And so those two pieces were the big outputs there. The governor in May convened the Economic Recovery Committee. That was chaired by Josh Broder and Lori LaChance. If you haven't heard from them, I know some committees have met with them. If you haven't heard from them, I'm guessing you will at some point soon. They did a really great job trying to create some recommendations that get us back to being able to execute the strategic plan. So, I think we all, when we look at the Maine economy, you would say, okay, if you're going to recover, you don't necessarily want to recover to where you were, because at that point, we all looked at the economy and said, it's not strong enough, it's not diverse enough, it won't withstand challenges, those types of things. And there were real opportunities. And so, this is an opportunity using the Economic Recovery Committee to leapfrog where we were to get to where we need to go. So, so that's the work that they did. We'll talk a little bit about the implementation of that and how that starts to play out in the work that we do. And then obviously along the way, the 4-year plan for climate action. part of the innovation opportunities we have for Maine heritage industries like forest products, like fishing, really are also global climate solutions. And so there's a lot of connectivity between these three plans. And I would say this grouping here on the bottom is just a reminder that the report on the Permanent Commission on the status of racial, indigenous, and Maine tribal populations really can help inform the implementation of all of these. So think of that as one of the real key overlays to all of the plans in how we look at moving forward. So key themes, talent, right? And as you talk to business owners, their people are really what drive their growth, their productivity. So talent is always going to be the economic driver of any economic plan. We have to grow our workforce. We were originally looking to add 75,000 people into the Maine workforce. Some of that was going to come from talent attraction. Some of that was going to come from workforce participation. What we're seeing now is that we've lost some of those jobs. So we will think about that milestone a little bit differently. The other thing that we're actually seeing now, though, is an influx of people. We are seeing, real estate sales, particularly real estate sales in rural communities, going up. Prices are going up. And it's interesting because almost overnight, we started getting calls from these rural communities saying, we can't handle the population growth. We don't have the services. We don't have, healthcare services. We don't have public safety services. We don't have a fire department strong enough for this influx of people. And so it was interesting because we went from, if we don't get people into our communities, our school will fail, and then the heart of the community starts to fail. And it went from that to, we just gained 12 kids into our schools. We don't have room for them because of the overnight shift. And so it's an interesting dynamic, and certainly having more people in our rural communities creates real opportunity. And so it's a good challenge to have of finding the right number of books and the right number of seats and being prepared to handle those. Carrabassett Valley is a voucher system. And so they have increased students and they just have to give out vouchers for those students. And so there are some real challenges that it creates, but the reality is having additional people in our rural communities long-term is beneficial. And so one of the things that we're trying to work with rural communities on is, how do you embrace folks? How do we help them feel like part of these communities so that they stay long-term, and even if they do need to commute every once in a while, that they would still have home base in Maine as part of our rural communities. So it's a significant shift in how we implement that work stream, but we'll work through that one. The business climate's got to be stable and predictable. This was true pre-COVID. It will be true post-COVID. Certainly during COVID, the stability is a little bit more volatile, or there is less stability. But that business climate, in order for people to make significant investments, needs to be stable. What we saw pre-COVID was smaller incremental growth and some large projects. What we have seen during COVID is at least a real lens around people that are watching how we are developing COVID solutions and wanting to be part of that investment scheme. And so, the work that's going on in life sciences and biotech has really picked up there. So I think, again, if you're looking for any of the positive pieces in how we recover and where we can influence kind of shorter term growth, we're seeing some of those bright spots. Obviously, not to be naive about the impact in the current economic situation. We aren't that at all, but we do want to find the places where we can grow. We talked about these global climate solutions. If you think about heritage industries, forest products, fishing, farming, all of them are key. Innovation in those sectors are all part of climate goals. So, we have some great projects in the forest sector, and we need to shore up the supply chain in forest products because, as you all know, we had a digester explode. We had a number of other things that aren't pandemic related, but significantly had impact on that sector. So how do we work on using that wood basket more effectively? How do we make sure that supply chain has a place for their products? As you talk to loggers and others, they don't want help, they want markets. And so the question is, how do we help them create those markets? And that's work that fits into this grouping. Ubiquitous connectivity. I feel like I talk about broadband and cellular connectivity every day, a whole lot of the time, and I have for years because it's important to me, and I think it's important to economic growth in our state. But as we attract this workforce, and as we attract these other businesses, right, to bring their investment capital here, they're expecting to be connected. They don't expect to have to dial in with their cell phone and have a Zoom link open because that's the only way they can be sure to stay connected. They expect to be able to drive up the I-95 corridor and be able to maintain a phone call the entire way. Those are things maybe we all have gotten used to having to make accommodations for, and we all do. But the reality is we try to bring in investment here. It's not built for economic growth, so we need to do something different. 5G is being deployed much more quickly in other parts of the country. Some of that, again, right, you get back to this kind of permitting and predictability piece, but you also get to expectations and investment. So ubiquitous connectivity is a real challenge for us. And then modern infrastructure, again, that looks at connectivity. It also looks at rail. It looks at other high-speed, low carbon impact, modern housing, things like that, right? If you want to attract talent to Maine, you have to have appropriate workforce housing for those workers. You have to have, cultural attractions that make them want to come, right? All of that. So here's just a sample. We talk a lot about innovation and not being in the same room with you, it's a little bit hard to tell, but eyes tend to glaze over when we talk about innovation. We talk about R&D, right? They tend to be esoteric things that I think collectively we all agree are important, but what does that mean to people? So this is a flow chart just to give a sense for what do these things mean? How do you innovate in forest products? And how does that drive a workforce continuum that's not just about one end of the spectrum or the other end of the spectrum, right? We talk a lot about either you have to be this or you have to be this. The reality is the modern workforce is a real continuum, and there are spots along the way for anybody who wants to participate in. So this just gives a look at forest products and looks at loggers, machine setters, conservation work, land management type work. Then you get into kind of truck drivers and transportation and modernization there. You've got sawmills, you've got machinery work, you've got people that sell those products. And then you start thinking about kind of nanocellulose and other uses for the whole tree to make the whole tree more valuable. And without any of these steps along the way, no step is independent. And so they're all important. And if we do that, and then we can use outputs from forest products, not just to make paper or not just for one thing, but to think about the outputs making lots of different things across sectors. This bioplastics piece is really interesting, right? How do you replace a plastic bottle with a wood-based bottle? That's not that far away. There are options there. Obviously, there are lots of other options for how to replace plastics too. But there's no reason that we can't be a key part of that solution. And that, again, if you think about if you get a replacement for bioplastics out of nanocellulose here, all the way back to the supply chain, right? Then you started making those markets that the loggers are asking for. So this is good for everyone in this value chain. So then the logical question is, how do you implement, right? If implementation of a plan is the most important part, it's not always the most fun part. So we had 1,300 Mainers help develop the plan, and lots of events. People wanted to weigh in. They wanted their opinion heard. But implementation is really what will make this product change the landscape, right, and really allow to hit these milestones and the goals that we're setting. So so there are 8 work streams. We've broken workforce up into 2 because it was so important. So 8 work streams. Each work stream will have an active working team that will include someone from the public sector, multiple people from the private sector, somebody from local communities, and industry experts. It may also include folks from higher ed. It may include folks from K-12. It may include legislators if there's interest. So anyway, it's a working committee, and we want to be careful that they're not advisory committees. These are people that are really going to do some work around how do we take the project suite that will get us to our goals for each of these and get them embedded in local communities and get action being driven. If you look at the outcomes of the ERC report, they line up really well. So there's no conflict, in my opinion, between their thoughts to each other. That's why I'm kind of side that you can see kind of talent attraction, talent development, innovation, entrepreneurship, access in early care and education and housing. Those are all modern infrastructure in our world, or ubiquitous connectivity. So you can see real alignment there around how we implement that group. Each of those committees, again,
Commissioner Johnson, are you there?
It'll take a second. Senator Curry, she always comes back. She can hear us, but she will cut out.
Okay. We'll wait a moment.
Yeah, she'll be back in a second. It happens. It's that ubiquitous connectivity issue we're trying to solve.
Let's see. Jody, you have a question?
Yes, Kate, could you send me 3 copies of all those reports, one for Opla, one that I sent to the law library, and one for the master file, please?
Sure. Yes, I'll email you to find out exactly which ones you're looking for, but yes, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Excellent.
She's going to log back in.
Okay. We'll look for her in the waiting room.
While you're waiting, I can show you my Tesla watch. It's kind of different. It's got even tubes that light up. I'll give you a little laugh for today.
Thank you, Senator Searway.
Appreciate that, Senator. While we're waiting, it's just really good to see everybody. Representative Austin just walked away. I was going to say hello to her.
Go. Excellent. And Commissioner Johnson should be on her way back in.
And that's an example of ubiquitous connectivity.
Kate? Can Kate hear me? No?
Yes. I think Representative Austin, we're back in.
Did she speak? Did Kate speak to me? I'm sorry, I left for 1 second.
That's right. She just said hello.
Oh, hello, dear.
Hi.
Take care. Stay well.
So I will give you, it seems like it might be working a little better without the screen share. So maybe we try it without, if that's okay, if we try it without the screen share.
I think we're ready for Q&A. Not exact, you're never exactly sure where you lost people, but.
I think you cut out right at the end there. So if you wanted to repeat any of your last thoughts, please feel free.
No, I just, I look forward to working with this committee on kind of growing our economy and diversifying the economy. I think there's no more important time to be working on this than right now. So thank you for being part of this committee, and we look forward to working with you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I think it is why many of us chose this committee and requested it. So I'm looking for questions. Do any members have a question for the commissioner? I see Representative Collmore. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much for the presentation. That was very informational and helpful. First, I'd love to get a copy of all three reports, like a hard copy of all three reports that you mentioned. That would be fantastic, so I can mark them all up with my questions and everything as I go through them. I did have a question on what falls under the other retail category that you had that chart up of all of the different categories that had increased percentages. That was the highest increase, and I was just curious what fell underneath that category.
So a lot of the online retail will fall under that category. So if you think Amazon, obviously Amazon has seen incredible growth since the beginning of the pandemic. They and others certainly fall into that category.
Does that include like Walmart if it's through online, or does the Walmart one fall under the general merchandise?
Walmart would fall under general merchandise.
Okay,
it would also include some of the small specialty stores. They don't have to be online to be in other retail. It could be like small specialty stores as well. But most of that growth is coming from online, the larger online only retailers.
Okay, and I just had one more question for now. Is there a full list of all of the businesses who applied versus who received it for those grants?
There is. Yep, we can send that out to you as well.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Senator Searway, I see that you have a question. Go ahead.
Yes. I just, the other day I was in my vehicle and I've got a GPS in it, and I happened to, my wife and I was just out there, gonna go out to eat, and we pushed the navigation button for restaurants, and about 50% of them are closed. And it's changed that much within just a year or two. And I'm just kind of concerned on a lot of things that have happened for restaurants. I know the wage went up, we have COVID, we have the two-week sick. There's a whole lot of things that came at them at once. And I don't know what we can do to help. I think, I've been talking to a few more in the area, and they're really on the edge of closing up shop. And I don't know, what's your plan for helping get restaurants back in order?
Yeah, Senator, I think it's a concern that we all share, right? Restaurants tend to run at smaller margins to begin with, so cash reserves to get through longer periods of difficulty is smaller. To your point, there are multiple factors at play here. So I think there are a handful of things that we've done over the last few months to try to create lifelines for them. Now we are trying to help them all get into the PPP phase, because that's right, the next piece of financial support that is available to them. So I think that is kind of the current priority, as well as looking at what capacity looks like on an ongoing basis. How do we continue to try to work through some of those pieces in partnership with businesses, with restaurants. There is an ongoing body of work there. I would say it doesn't move particularly fast right now. For a lot of them, this isn't a good season in general, so it's a really difficult time. It adds to that difficulty in recovery because they need to get to June or July before they start, at least for a big portion of the state. I think there are a lot of pieces at work there. I don't have a good answer to that, other than I think there are 2 or 3 small pieces that we're trying to work on, and we'll continue to work with them to see if there's more.
Representative Ducharme.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Heather. It's very informative. 2 things. I'll give you an easy answer to the restaurant thing. Get the PPP thing going and let them open. The second thing that I wanted to say is for most of this pandemic, those of you on this committee don't realize the kind of work that Commissioner Johnson has put in. I don't know how many times I get phone calls saying, Jack, can you put me in touch with this person or that person? So I just wanted to just kind of give Commissioner Johnson kind of a pat on the back and say she's really worked hard for businesses and tried to do the best thing for people in the face of some really difficult circumstances. So I just wanted to say thanks, Heather.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for the connections when we needed them. We appreciate the help there, right? Making sure that we're getting diverse business owners involved in the discussion. I think it's really easy, right, to reach out to the same handful of people that are kind of easy and within arm's length all of the time, but to make sure that we're getting good representation from diverse groups is a critical part of the solution. So we'll continue to try to do that.
I do not see any other questions, and I see our next presenter is also here. So I think we will say thank you, and I'm sure we will be communicating often and with each other. So I thank you for coming out, and I look forward to working with you.
Great. Thank you all. It's nice to see you.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Mm-hmm. So in our agenda, we have we started out a little bit late, so I wanted to make sure that we gave Commissioner Johnson enough time. We do have a break scheduled later on. We might dig into that a little bit. Our next presenter is Christopher Quint. He's the director of the State Workforce Board. And Christopher, if the floor is yours, welcome, and thank you for coming out.
Thank you very much, Senator Curry and Representative Roberts and all the members of the IDEA committee. It's great to be here. It's been a long time since I've been in front of a legislative committee, and this is the first time I've been in front of a legislative committee by a computer. So hopefully this goes well. But thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen with you here. All right, can everyone see that? I'm gonna just see some heads shaking and we're good. All right, so my name is Christopher Quint. I'm the director of the State Workforce Board, which is part of the Department of Labor. And I'm gonna kind of give you guys an overview of the Workforce Board, the work that we do, and hopefully if there are any questions, I can answer them, and see how this goes. So the Workforce Board. So basically, this is a board that has been around since, in some iterations, since the early 2010s, maybe even before, comprised of business, labor, community-based organizations, legislators, state agencies, local government. Right now, there are 33 members on the board. The Workforce Board members are all nominated by the governor per WIOA, or the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, and I'll go over that in a little bit later, and have to be confirmed by the legislature, and that is a new change for the board as of 2020. Legislation that passed in 2019 required board members to be confirmed by the legislature. Prior, they were not. So that is a new step we have to go through. And the Workforce Board is one of the requirements under WIOA in order for states or governors of states to receive federal workforce funding from the Department of Labor, Department of Education, et cetera. So just our mission here, basically, I'm not going to read through this, so you all can read this, and I think you all either have a copy of this or will get a copy. But our charge is to advise the governor on workforce policy and plans, and to connect the various entities across the states who play in this field, whether it's state government, local government, nonprofits, employers, labor organizations, higher education, K-12, philanthropic organizations. Our goal, our charge is to really connect those various entities and try to ensure that everyone is moving forward on one path with one goal and one outcome, which is to meet the needs of employers and make sure all workers have an opportunity to work. So right here, this is in 2019, the State Workforce Board embarked on a process to put forward a workforce strategy, workforce strategic plan, and we did that in such a way as to align with the governor's 10-year economic development plan, to make sure that what we were doing was ultimately supporting and meeting the goals of that economic development plan. And I heard a little before I came on, Commissioner Johnson talking about the implementation work groups. And one of those work groups, which is Grow Local Talent, is a work group that I'm chairing, along with my counterpart at DOL, Kim Moore, who's the Bureau Director for the Bureau of Employment Services. So we have our first meeting coming up, so we're going to be digging into that. But what came out of this was our vision for the workforce, which I talked about before. A responsive, networked, and coordinated system integrates all stakeholders into a seamless continuum, resulting in increased educational employment opportunity, attainment for main people, and focus on careers, not just jobs. Our strategy, like I said, was to achieve the goals outlined in the 10-year economic development plan, specifically the two goals: grow the average annual wage by plus 10% and attract 75,000 people to Maine's talent pool. Now, obviously, our plan is not the sole plan out there to attract 75,000 people to Maine's talent pool, but we want to be able to contribute to that goal in the governor's plan. As part of that, we came up with 3 goals in order to achieve that. Our part is to partner and respond to business talent needs by growing Maine's workforce by 30,000 people, to be able to contribute to that number. We want to create a system of lifelong learning and employment for Maine residents, making sure that they have all the necessary educational and training opportunities that they need to promote career advancement. And then thirdly, build an integrated system that is accessible, data and demand driven, and is accountable to workers and businesses. One of the challenges with the workforce system for many years was there was a variety of people doing a lot of different things, but no one was really talking to each other or coordinating on those activities. And this is particularly now, an opportunity in time where it is essential that everyone playing in this field of workforce development and economic development, they go hand in hand. You cannot have one without the other, but that are working together for a common goal. And that's our charge as the Workforce Board, is to try to bring those people together. So I've talked about the workforce development system. Commissioner Fortman at the Department of Labor and I have gone back and forth with this term workforce development system since I started. My background is in communications and policy, particularly communications. And this is a challenging one. When you say workforce development system, people kind of look at you confused, and it's not a term that I think people understand every day. But essentially, and I don't think we're there yet as far as figuring out how this to define this, but it's essentially a group of agencies, and agencies here is defined loosely, not just state agencies, but local agencies, higher education, K-12, that provide services, workforce services to workers and businesses. It's made up of many programs, and then the funding streams come from a variety of resources. It's not just federal and state dollars, but there's philanthropic, there's private resources, there's a number of different resources that kind of play into the sphere. We have 2 primary customers, the workforce system: job seekers and working learners. So And you see here in the chart, on the slide, those different people under that fit to that customer category. And then the second customer are businesses that are seeking candidates for job openings. And I want to stress that second part for a moment, just because I think there's sometimes a misunderstanding of workforce development system that is strictly, making sure that we provide educational and training opportunities for workers to get a job. And that is a huge piece of it. But a equally huge piece of this is making sure that we are responding to the needs of employers as a system to meet their needs for workers pre-COVID, and particularly now, even during COVID. The Workforce Board is a majority employer board. That is a requirement under the federal WIOA Act. 51% of the board members and this is the case for any workforce board across the country, is 51% of the board is required to be comprised of employers at any time. Falling out of compliance, that you jeopardize federal funding coming from DOL, Department of Education, et cetera. So, and we have on our board some great employers. Our board currently is chaired by Guy Langevin, who works for Dead River. He's been chair for a little over a year, and he has been a remarkable chair and is doing some amazing things. And we are continually bringing on new folks to the board. We will have 3 new employer representatives that have recently nominated, that were previously nominated last year, but because of COVID, their nomination hearings had to be canceled. So they'll be coming back around, going in front of the Labor Committee. And then we will have we have new nominations coming up later this session as well. So we're really trying to attract those members that meet the that really showcase the diversity of Maine's business landscape, and both geographic and industry wise. So there are several agencies that contribute to the oversight and the resources of the system: state level, Department of Labor, Department of Education, HHS, Economic Development. And at the local level, there are local workforce boards. There are 3 local workforce boards in the state: Maine Career Centers, Maine Adult Education, Community College System, and the University of Maine System. So this convoluted chart is, and I see a lot of smiling, but it's quite frankly, if you knew how many different variations or drafts that I've gone through of this, this is really the simplest way to kind of put into graph form, chart form, what the system looks like. So at the top, you have the various funding streams. Those funding streams come down from the various agencies to the particular programs or services. Go from Governor Mills to, or whoever, the Governor of Maine, to the Maine Department of Labor. The State Workforce Board is not, we're not a funding entity. We don't receive funding. We don't provide programs. We're an advisory oversight board. So we don't provide, we don't run the programs that you see in the workforce system. So, but we do craft the policy, develop the WIOA's 4-year, WIOA, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, requires states to develop a 4-year workforce plan. And we lead the charge in pulling that together. And that's a lengthy document, 400 some odd pages of workforce policy. It's on our website if you'd want to go read it. And then the funding comes down to the Department of Labor, and it goes to the 3 local workforce boards: Northeastern Local Workforce Board, Central Western Local Workforce Board, and Coastal Counties Workforce Board. So those 3 workforce boards then put out for bid contracts for actual workforce services that are provided through our career centers, that are provided through community college system, the University of Maine system, that are provided across the state. So that's kind of how it flows in its most simple way, even though it doesn't look as simple as maybe sometimes I think it should be. And then to WIOA. So this was a federal law that was previous, for those of you who are familiar with workforce development, this was called the Workforce Innovation Act, or WIA, W-I-A. And then under President Obama's administration, the Congress passed and he signed a revised act into law, and it became WIOA, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. I've talked about kind of what it's designed. It's designed to really integrate systems across the state, integrate these workforce development systems. It directs every state to develop a 4-year strategic and operational plan. And so we last early February 2020, got final sign off on our 2020 to 2023 strategic and operational plan, which we're operating under right now. As I said, it is up on our website, DOL's website. You can go look at that. And then under WIOA, there are 4 programs that are authorized by WIOA that workforce funding seeks to address. And Title I, adult, this is dislocated worker and youth programs. And then Title II is Adult Education and Family Literacy Act program. Title III, Wagner-Pfizer Employment Services. And then Title IV, Vocational Rehabilitation Programs. And that's what I have for you. So let me stop sharing here, and hopefully I can answer any questions you may have. I will, before I stop, I will just say there's a lot of information in this kind of sphere, and it's something that when we do these presentations, we really try very hard to try to simplify this as much as possible. What I will stress to you is that as a state, and this includes private, philanthropic, state, local funding, federal funding, over $500 million a year goes towards workforce development in the state. The state share of that is a very small percentage of that. It's roughly what we get from the federal government that goes out to our local career centers is, it's like 3 million or something like that, 3 to 5 million. So our share of what goes into that is small, but our role is much larger than what the funding may dictate, because we need to, our charge is, like I said, to integrate and bring all these various partners together and make sure that all the funding that is out there is operating and going towards the same goals. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? I see a question from Representative Roberts. Go ahead, Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Quinn, for coming to speak to us today. I have something that I'm wondering about. I'm not sure if you're familiar with down in my area. I'm in the Berwicks. We have Pratt Whitney.
Yes.
And New York County Community College has a precision machinery program that feeds into it. And going along there, Pratt Whitney also pays for them to finish their, well, anything, associates, bachelors, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other programs like this, maybe not specifically in the field, in that field in the state? Is this something that you're looking at as a model? Because it seems to be wildly successful down here.
Yeah, so there are a number of different programs that are very similar, and I've actually had an opportunity to go and tour that Precision Manufacturing Center down at York Community College, and it is an amazing center. For a guy who dabbles slightly in woodworking, I thought I'd seen a lot of stuff, but that is very overwhelming and very incredible, the setup they have there. And York County Community College specifically is really doing some innovative things around workforce development. So that is a program that there are a number of those across the state. That are kind of serve different audiences, right? So you have, let's say CTEs, career technical education at various high schools across the state that are, training the next generation of workers to go out. You have programs like what's at York County Community College or Washington County Community College that are doing a lot around manufacturing. And there are a number of employers that will, for their workers to go and continue to get further education and develop their skills will pay them to go do that. They see the value in that. Pratt Whitney is not alone in that. There are a number of really great employers across the state that are doing that. You also have things like apprenticeship programs. Maine has a very robust apprenticeship program that is out there that is not just manufacturing, but is the Hospitality Association recently, or not recently, this would have been pre-COVID, but started a apprenticeship program for people in the hospitality industry. So, when it comes to apprenticeship programs, these are programs that, they're a registered apprenticeship program, so they have to go through a certain process to become registered with the state of Maine. But we're always thinking about what are the industries that maybe are not represented in apprenticeship programs, and how can we continue to develop those, or develop these partnerships with employers and local educational providers to make sure that we're meeting those needs. Again, it goes back to meeting the needs of employers and what their needs are for their workforce, and ensuring that workers and Maine people are continuing to grow in their careers. That that part I said before is it's about careers, not just jobs. That's important, right? We want to develop people in their careers and ensure that people have long-term stability and can provide for their families and give back to their community over time with these programs. So I'm glad you brought up that program down at Pratt Whitney. They're a great employer. That's a great program, but there are a number of those across the state that are established.
Thank you.
Senator Curry, I think you were muted there.
Representative Pepworth.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Quick. It's a great presentation. I was curious who is covered by Title III Wagner Pizer Employment Services. It's not one I'm familiar with.
Yeah, so, and let me just pull up my handy dandy fact sheet there for a moment. And I will address that here for you. So those 4 programs under WIOA are the various. These are not all DOL, right? MDOL programs. They are various programs that are run by different folks across the state. So these are not specific to MDOL, all of them, but they are the various what WIOA has laid out as to what they want to see run. So let me I apologize here. So employment services, yeah. So Wagner Pizer, employment services. So these are services directly for employment. So one-stop infrastructure and job matching. So these are, things like the Maine Career Center, right? That are directly provided to workers to ensure that they can go out and get that job. Those direct employment services, how to build your resume, how to conduct interviews and things like that. So that is specifically what that refers to.
Could you, Mr. Quinn, I'm wondering if I really appreciate the chart. Matter of fact, I was going to ask for it. And so that's why you saw me smiling, as I was trying to dive into it. What was missing in it was kind of the brand programs that maybe we're familiar with once they get funded from the, at the bottom of the chart, I was looking for programs that I might be more familiar with, like what they would be named. So you got it at that a little bit with the Wagner Pizer. So that's funding career centers, I take it. So within agency career centers, can you name some of the others programs that we might be familiar with that are coming through that chart?
So yeah, so I mean, these are, and I'll just bring up this chart here again, so folks can follow along. So these various, so the U.S. Department of Labor funds comes down, and these funds come down to fund the workforce innovation, WIOA, Wagner Pizer, veteran services that are across the state, Department of Education funds the programs here, and then you have state funding that funds things like apprenticeship, competitive skills scholarship program, rehabilitation services. So these are the various kind of blocks of programs that the funding goes down through. So, you know, you have your main career centers, the apprenticeship programs, you know, things like what Representative Roberts mentioned before, the machining center down at York County Community College, right? That's all workforce development funding that are funding these programs. CTEs, that's part of the workforce development system, career and technical education. So there are a number of these, and I have another fact sheet that I can provide to the committee that kind of goes into a lot more depth and detail about the various programs that are out there. There truly are, it's a big system across the state. And when I said before, the challenge of putting together a presentation to fit a 15 to 20 minute thing is a challenge. But I have other fact sheets that I can provide to your committee that if you want to dig much deeper into these things that kind of outline the number of different programs that we have across the state. And not just, when I say we, it's not just the Maine Department of Labor, it's the workforce development system that are all kind of playing in this same sandbox.
Great, thank you very much. Let's see, I wonder if you could take the screen down.
Oh, sorry. That's
all right.
There we go.
There we go. We have a couple more questions. Representative Collmore.
Hi, thank you. First, I'd like to say thank you very much for that presentation. It was very informative. I'd also love to have copies of those, sorry, my video is not working. There we go. Those fact sheets, because I think that would be helpful in understanding the programs. But I also wondered, you mentioned registered apprenticeship programs, which I think is great. My background is actually in education, and where I work currently, I'm doing workforce development activities. I'd love to see a list of the apprenticeships programs that have already been approved, or at least a location of where I can find that list. Because I think that's very important. And I don't know that I've ever seen that either at the University of Maine system, which is where I work, or at local high schools either.
Yeah, I will get that for you and provide it to the committee.
Thank you very much.
Representative Austin. Representative Austin.
Sorry, someone was at my door. Chris, do you think, maybe I'm putting you on the spot, but because of the challenge we are still in, do you think along the lines of, say, Abbott and Purington and all of that, there will be programs that they will pursue for training within house? Abbott may already have some, I'm not sure, but Purington, do you think people, some of those major companies that have dug in and sort of changed their, if you want to call it their lines to accommodate the needs that we've had here in the state and actually across the nation? So any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think employers are constantly looking at ways that they can continue to operate and be innovative and stay competitive in the state. And our role is not to go out and say to an employer, hey, you should have this ABC training program, but we are constantly that's really the role of the board. The board is really a good cross section of employers across the state, across a number of different industries. So their role and their job along with me is to continually to develop these relationships with companies across the state. We just had one board member actually term off of the workforce board that was with Puritan Medical, that was on the workforce board for a number of years. So we have Bath Iron Works represented, and Dead River, and I'm blanking on the other business right now off the top of my head. But so I guess that's a rambling way of saying is that our role is really to look within industry sectors, right? What are the industry sectors that are kind of growing and going to be the future of Maine, and making sure that those industry sectors are represented, making sure that we're meeting the system is meeting the needs of those industry sectors, whether it's things like aquaculture or advanced manufacturing or transportation, whatever it may be, is developing sector specific strategies for each of them, and working with the businesses within those sectors to make sure that we are meeting their needs, whether it is like the hospitality industry came to us and said they really felt like they needed to develop an apprenticeship program, right? And so our folks at DOL worked with them and helped them develop an apprenticeship program, and that's kind of how that partnership works. So we're constantly looking at these various sectors across the state and making sure that they have what they need to attract and hire the folks that they want to grow their business.
Just as a quick follow-up on that, in particular, the tourism training, do they end up with a certificate of any kind?
Yeah, so when you finish an apprenticeship program, you do have a certificate that you can that you can then put on your resume that you have this apprenticeship certification, finish this apprenticeship program or whatever. So the hospitality industry will have that. Any apprenticeship program will have that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Representative Bailey.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Quinn, question, what type of resources does the state allocate towards the type of projects that you're talking about on an annual basis with regards to, when we look at sorry, I just dropped off my presentation here, but the sort of attracting and retaining the workforce talent that we need for these jobs. I mean, I think about sort of the parallels with, there's a dedicated revenue stream around tourism to promote tourism, sort of looking at this from that sort of angle. What does that look like from a dollars and cents perspective? What actual dollars are spent in terms of marketing and advertising from the state's commitment versus what the private sector spends, and what does that relationship look like?
So it's a good question. And going back to that chart again too, the sources of funding are, you're not going to be able to go to the state budget and be able to find a workforce development line, right? What you'll find is a lot of federal dollars. This is a large chunk of federal dollars that come down to MDOL, to higher education, in the form of annual funding or in the form of grants. There are grant opportunities around workforce development that are coming out of federal agencies all the time. And our job too is to continually look for those grant opportunities to make sure that we can meet the needs of employers, right? So and it's so if it's wrapped up into the University of Maine system's annual budget or the community college system's annual budget. But if you were to look at the state budget and specifically look at MDOL, the WIOA, that pocket of money, that Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, that's all federal dollars. Now, there are state dollars that go towards apprenticeship programs, and there are state dollars that go towards some sort of training, but it is wrapped up within that MD-WAL budget. You know, we're in the process of doing kind of a kind of trying to capture what that system, you know, what this dollar amount looks like. You know, the $550 million, I think I threw out there earlier, that is an old number, but it is the best number that we have right now to really showcase what type of resources we're talking about that go into workforce development. But that's federal, that's state, that's local, that's private, that's philanthropic, that's higher education. So you know, it's a large chunk of money, but it's hard to really kind of pinpoint it, because employers as well, do a large chunk of work within workforce development directly through their companies, you know, training, retraining their own employees, doing their own marketing for job openings that they have. So, you know, that's a hard kind of quantifiable number for us to be able to get, but we are in the process right now of trying to get a better sense of a more current dollar value of what this looks like in the state.
That's
Thank you, Mr. Quint.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that wraps up our questions. I wanted to just check in. Representative Collarmore, did you have a second question, or is it that your hand just left up from earlier?
No, I do have a second follow-up question. He talked about the sector-specific tracks, and I just wanted to ask a question about that, if that's all right.
Please go ahead.
So one of the things that we have been focusing on a lot, at least in my workforce development stuff, and it's very hard to combat this, is siloing. So I'm curious how you're setting specific sector tracks, but also avoiding the possibility of siloing and then outcasting people who could cross-train from one field to another and not realize how their skills are transferable.
So when you're saying siloing, can you give me an example just so I fully understand what you're asking?
Yeah, so like at the University of Maine, we see electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, and civil engineers. And then my specific role is working with transportation professionals and helping them understand that just because you have a civil engineering degree doesn't mean that that's the only type of degree that can work in transportation. We also employ historians, we employ communications specialists, you know, all of those different things, and trying to help them understand that though you have the training in this sector, it's okay because you can move it to this sector.
So I think that really comes down to it's very specific to each sector, and as we develop and as we work through these strategies, our charge and our mission with all of this is to look at these specific sectors and try to work with employers and training providers to identify the jobs within those sectors and the skills that are needed for those jobs, and try to be as comprehensive as we can, and not pigeonhole ourselves towards for transportation we just want civil engineers, right? It's so it requires an approach by all partners to be open to looking at if you look pre-COVID-19, when our unemployment rate was super low, and the challenge we were having is that there were employers had needs. They needed workers. They had openings, but we didn't have they couldn't find the workers necessary to fill the jobs that they had. And so our pre-COVID strategy was to really look. All right, if the civil engineering field is not finding the workers, that's maybe a bad example, but nursing, let's use nursing as a great example. Even now, nursing, they're not finding the people to fill the jobs. All right, we need to look, as the workforce system, look to different populations across the state, whether it's new Mainers, or maybe there are older workers who are looking maybe for a second career or to come back into a career. Someone's looking to change careers. it requires a real comprehensive approach to make sure that we're kind of turning over every stone to make sure that those sectors are their needs are met for what those employers are asking.
Thank you very much.
I think you're muted, Senator Curry.
Yeah, you're muted. Senator Thierway.
Hi, Mr. Quint. When I was an assistant jail administrator, I finally came into an apprenticeship program. I was calling to find out about a hiring process, and all of a sudden they internship at the State House, and so I looked into it, and actually we had developed an apprenticeship program for corrections officers and law enforcement back many years ago, and it kind of went by the wayside after about maybe 4 or 5 years, but it did work well. I don't know if that's something that you could look into, and because I think it really helped enhance the quality officers, because many of them are just high school graduates or and whatever, and it actually gave them an incentive of, like, they've got an associate's degree, in a year's time, they got a 3% increase and they had more pride in themselves. They had a degree. It was great. So maybe that's something to look into. Pearlie LeChan, Kennebec Valley Community School, had headed that with me.
Okay. Yeah, I'll look into that. I haven't heard that before, but I'll look into that and I'll get back to you.
Thanks.
Mr. Quinn, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time, and everybody, I appreciate your patience with me as I try various ways to unmute my microphone. And Representative Roberts, thank you for jumping in when I fail at that. So appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
So we've gone a little bit long. What I'm going to recommend is that we take a 10-minute break, and then we come back. Our next presenter, Mr. Gilman, is here from the Maine Chamber of Commerce, and Mr. Gilman, I hope you're able to stay. Great. Let's take a 10-minute break, and we will be back. Let's see. The time is 2:35. At 2:45, let's begin again with the presentation by the Maine Chamber of Commerce. And thank you very much for coming.
We're currently on a 10-minute break, coming back in 4 minutes.
Great, thanks. Welcome back, everybody. So our next presenter is Ben Gilman with the Maine Chamber of Commerce. Thank you very much for coming today, and the floor is yours. Were you looking to share screen, or did you have a presentation you wanted to share screen, or would you just like to talk to us?
Good afternoon, Senator Curry. I do not have a presentation, but I will reference a document that a Making Maine Work report that's available on our website. But if anyone wants to see it, it's publicly available. But I want to thanks Senator Curry and Representative Roberts, members of the IDEA Committee. Again, thanks for having the State Chamber of Commerce here today to present to you. My name is Ben Gilman. I am General Counsel for the Maine State Chamber of Commerce. I'm also a resident of Gorham, Maine, and I happen to reside in the half of Gorham that Representative Bailey represents. So it's good to see my state representative here today. I work on workforce and education issues on behalf of the Maine State Chamber. I also work on environment and energy. I want to give you a little bit of background of who we are and how we develop our policy positions as we come before you during this legislative session remotely via Zoom, which is all different. We're usually there in person. But the Maine State Chamber of Commerce, we're a statewide business association. We're made up of a network of 5,000 businesses from all across Maine, from Fort Kent to Kittery, and from Freiburg to Eastport and everywhere in between. Over 90% of the member businesses we represent are less than 20 employees. We are governed by a 90-member board of directors. These business people that make up our board of directors are both large and small. And we develop our policies that we come before you and present on different pieces of legislation via our policy committees. These are subcommittees of our board that are made up of our members, and we meet on a monthly basis and develop our policies. If it's a bigger issue, something of really substance, we do take it to our full board of directors and have the debate. So when I come before you, I'm the messenger of delivering the position developed by our policy committee and our board of directors. But one of the things I want to talk to you today and kind of give you a little bit of background of the chamber and where our goals come from is a policy document we developed in 2018 called Making Maine Work. Some of you may have heard of this before, some of you may not. But before every administration, we go out and we survey Maine businesses. We partner with the Maine Development Foundation and Educate Maine. This time around, we went and spoke with over 1,000 businesses all across the state. And we released this document, Making Maine Work, back then. To give you a little background of kind of the direction we developed our goals, when we did this in 2010, the top issues that came back were healthcare, energy costs, regulations. When you fast forward to 2018, when we released this document, 3 out of the 5 issues had to deal with workforce development: skill, supply, size of our workforce, and broadband. Healthcare was still there in the top 5 as it was 8 years prior, but the issues had changed significantly. And I think in terms of, if you look at it and you look at the document, which is located, I mentioned before, on our website, mainechamber.org, feel free to peruse it. There's some other recommendations in there, but I want to talk about the top 3 recommendations that came out of this report that have to deal with workforce, size, supply, and also skills, developing skills, and broadband, which are going to be some key issues, I think, as this committee moves forward. So coming out of that report and our recommendations back in 2018, we released it to the legislature. And like I said, this was the Maine State Chamber of Commerce, along with the Maine Development Foundation and Educate Maine. We all worked together on developing this. Our goal A was to grow the size of Maine's workforce. That's an obvious one. Our goal B was to grow the skills of Maine's workforce so that 60% of Maine workers have a credential value by 2025. And I'll talk a little bit more about that and where that goal came from. And our third goal was to make Maine a leader in affordable, high-speed broadband access for communities and businesses alike. All 3 of these go hand in hand, but really the first 2 I'd like to talk about: growing the size of Maine's workforce, but also growing the skills of Maine's workforce so that 60% of Maine workers have a credential of value by 2025. This came directly out of the work of a group called Maine Spark, which the Maine Chamber was a founder of. Maine Spark is a group that was started in about 2015. It was the Maine State Chamber of Commerce, Educate Maine, Maine Development Foundation, Maine's university system, Maine's community colleges, and the Finance Authority of Maine. Has grown over to over 100 organizations statewide. But as we were looking at Maine's post-secondary degree attainment goals as a state, we look back, in order to grow our economy, we realized at a conservative 1% growth over the next 10 years, when we're looking at that, and these were the organizations, that we would have to achieve our workforce a credential value or a post-secondary degree attainment level of 60% by 2025. Back when we set that goal, Maine had about a 42% level of post-secondary degree attainment. We're now over 50%, and we're on our way to, I believe, achieving that goal. We still have a few more years to go. And I think it's important to note, when you look at that 60% number and credential value of what's included in that, I think that's a bit of a shift that Maine Spark helped kind of drive. Is we need as many 2-4-year and postgraduate degrees as we can here in the state of Maine, but we also need those credential values. And what is the definition of a credential value? It kind of can vary, but it's something that's going to help you obtain a job. It can be a professional license. It can be a certificate. Something that's going to increase your earning potential up to 20% is one of the more accepted definitions of a credential of value. So we put those goals together, and you add on top of it, one of the ways that we're going to achieve that is to expand broadband here in the state of Maine so that it's high-speed testing, broadband access for communities and businesses. We saw recently in the governor's budget, a good start to that is looking at mapping of the state of Maine and looking at where we have gaps and holes here in the state. So that was back in 2018. We released a work report. I'd encourage you to go to our website and look at it. It's 36 pages. It's a quick read. There's an executive summary to it. And I can email anyone a link to that as well. But that being said, we are aware Making Maine Work was developed before COVID and the current world that we're living in. But as we look forward at the recommendations of the Economic Recovery Committee, we saw it come from the governor's office, which Dana Connors, who's the president and CEO of the Maine State Chamber of Commerce, did serve on. I think we'll see that along with a 10-year strategic plan for the state of Maine, which we were also a part of developing, that still growing our workforce, skill development, and broadband expansion are going to be keys as we move forward as a state. And we think there's going to be numerous pieces of policy decisions and legislation coming before this committee that we look forward to working with you on because to grow our economy and to grow our state, workforce development from the business community's perspective, but I think from everyone's perspective, Chris Quint from the Workforce Development Board did a great job. The statistics are there. To grow our economy, we need to grow our workforce and grow our skills in our workforce. And that will help us achieve, I think, what everyone wants at the end of the day. So that's a brief overview in the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I look forward to working with you all. And like I said, feel free to look at that report if you have any questions or thoughts. But going back to the Maine Spark initiative of that 60% goal by 2025, I think there's going to be some good opportunities for this legislature to move the ball forward to achieve that. And looking at different opportunities, whether it be looking at college costs, student loans, also looking at different aspects of different workforce populations that we can engage and get involved in our workforce. I think there are many opportunities there. So happy to answer any questions. I took 10 minutes of a scheduled 20 to 25, but happy to give back a few minutes of your time as well, knowing you're running a few minutes behind. So
I think we'll probably have some questions. And so I see one already. Thank you very much, Representative Pebworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Gilman. I appreciated this. I've been watching the credential of value pop up in various places in the last couple of years. And I wonder if you could restate what the 20% increased value, how you stated that, and also how we're going to measure that, please.
So that's a good question. So there is different definitions of what is a credential value, because it's not a 2 and a 4 year degree are easily defined from a accredited institution, where a credential value is the generally accepted term is a credential that will give you an increase in your earnings of 20%. So take you from what you're earning now with that credential, it will increase your earnings ability by 20%. Professional licenses are the easy one. And how you count that is a good question. We actually changed that. One of the ways that we went from 42% to quickly we jumped up to 45, 46% early on was the way we counted post-secondary degree attainment through the Department of Labor. We weren't counting those before, those certificates of value. And like I said, the easiest way to think about it is a professional license, an electrician's license, whether if you're drafting or something like that. Those licenses in which you have to obtain an actual certificate, but they go beyond that. It could be a stackable, badgeable credential. You become proficient in a computer program that's going to, increase your earning potential. Like I said, it can be debated a little bit, but generally speaking, around the country, it's looked at 20%. I think the Lumina Foundation that does a lot of work in this, that's kind of where they've drawn the line at in terms of a credential value.
While we're waiting for other questions, one of the things I have really valued is in this language of the credential value is it brings everyone on board. It helps us not to get into any silly and unproductive turf battles between universities and community colleges and certificates and industry credentials. It's everyone on board to get the skills that we need. And I think that's been a wonderful framing that the Chamber, along with Maine Development Foundation and Maine Spark, have led the way on. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you. And the work of Maine Spark, I think, has done gone a long way with the state. Like I said, it's not just one organization. It's now well over 100 across the state. Maine Spark was set up not to become a new organization or to reinvent the wheel. A lot of good work was going on in Maine. It was basically to allow us a place for us all to communicate and hear what's going on and talk about what's going on in one part of the state that can translate to the other in order for us to achieve that goal. So Maine Spark itself doesn't actually have an office or staff. We get together on a monthly basis and on a quarterly basis to kind of move the ball forward on that one goal, which is to achieve 60% of our population have a credential value by 2025.
Are there other questions? I don't see any further. Mr. Gilman, I really appreciate your time, and I'm sure we will see you in the future as we have specific bills that we are considering. Thank you very much for this briefing.
Thank you very much, and look forward to working with you all, and have a great rest of the afternoon.
Thank you.
Checking our participant list to see if our next presenter is here. Let's see, looks like we have caught up on time. Actually, a little bit ahead of time. Ms. Breton, can I ask you if you're on the call, if you're able to send a quick email over to our next speaker? And Mr. Seneff.
I will send him a quick email.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Yeah, he's in the waiting room.
You're muted again, Senator.
Thank goodness.
Still.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to use the space bar to unmute myself, and it is absolutely not working. So we'll move forward from now. Mr. Merritt, welcome very much. Welcome and thank you for coming. The previous speaker just ended, so the time is yours. Please, we look forward to your presentation. Do you need, were you seeking to screen share or were you just going to talk to us?
Yes, I do actually have some slides to share. So let me get myself put back together again here.
Sure.
And thank you for that. All right, can we see that?
Yes.
Great. All right, well, thank you, Senator Curry, Representative Roberts, members of the committee. Thanks for inviting me here to spend a few minutes to talk with you about the work of the Maine International Trade Center. My name is Wade Merritt. I am president of MITC. I'm also director of international trade within the DECD. I know that Commissioner Johnson mentioned us as one of the specialty programs. I know my friend and colleague, Brian Whitney from MTI, will be following me to talk about his program as well. I've been in this position leading this organization since 2017, but although this appointment is relatively recent, I've had the honor to serve the people of Maine here at the Trade Center since graduating from the University of Maine back in 1996. MITC is a 501c3 nonprofit with a public purpose, a unique public-private partnership of the state's business community and the state government. Our primary source of funds is the state's general fund allocation, but that's supplemented by private sector contributions from more than 250 businesses through a membership, as well as through sponsorship contributions, and in some cases, fee for service. We do charge for some of the things that we do, the services that we provide for companies. I should mention, though, that although MITC does have a membership, a paid membership, companies do not need to be members of the organization to access services. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is a public-private partnership. That is the public side of the public-private partnership. Companies do not need to be members to access services from the organization. We also serve as a conduit for federal export development funds through the U.S. Small Business Administration. These funds flow through us and are granted to businesses to help offset some of their costs, which can be significant, obviously, in participating in international trade events or in other activities to support their international business development. We have a robust governance structure. It includes the governor's office, the commissioner of DECD, this committee, a private sector board of directors, which is currently made up of 12 members, although there will be a bill in front of this committee coming up soon, LD7, which will seek to expand that to 15. And thank you to Senator Curry for agreeing to sponsor that for us. We were established in 1996 under Governor King. This was as a result of a unanimous vote of the 117th legislature. Though this occurred 25 years ago, I still like to highlight the unanimity of that vote. It was a striking agreement that international markets are and ought to be a key component of the state's economic development strategy. Several overlapping mission statements guide our work, but the one I like best comes from our enabling statute. You can see that on the slide on your screen. The Maine International Trade Center is established to enhance the competitive advantage of state businesses desiring to compete in the international market. As you might expect, that has changed a lot with the activities that occur under that mission have changed a lot. It is a very broad mandate for action. It allows for a lot of flexibility and maneuvering in tactics. It's probably even more broad than it was originally intended. If one considers what the world was like in 1996, the international market was over there and the domestic market was over here. But in 2021, arguably the international market is everywhere, and small businesses face global competition in many ways and in many places that were not contemplated 25 years ago. In addition to the parent brand, MITC also features 3 other branded initiatives that you may see out there in the market. The Maine North Atlantic Development Office, or MNATO, that was created in 2013 and is responsible for the development of relationships in the North Atlantic and Arctic region. This is growing out of the investment of AIMSKIP, the Icelandic National Shipping Line, at the Port of Portland. Looking at ways to try to expand our relationship with those markets beyond just putting freight in boxes and shipping it over, but also looking at other ways that we can work together for business success. This is headed by Dana Eidsness, who's a colleague of mine. She also works for DECD like I do. MNATO's mission is in some ways broader than MITC's. It encompasses some community development aspects, in addition to kind of more traditional international trade and business angles. Study Maine on the left, which was created in 2010 to promote Maine as an international education destination, and Invest in Maine on the right, which was also created in 2010, seeks to promote the state to the international investor community. plugged in quite closely with other economic development agencies, such as our parents at DCD, Main and Company, and the like. To give you a little bit of context about the companies that we work with, each year we have a staff of 10. We serve over 300 companies and organizations, universities, high schools, individuals, in about 97 actually, 97 communities in all 16 counties of the state. To the extent that, you know, international is often thought of as a large company game. It is decidedly not, at least not from our services, at least not from the companies that access services through us. 83% of those members, those companies that work with us, 83% of them have under 100 employees, 67% have less than 25, and they represent 35 different industry sectors. It is a very, very broad coalition of companies that are working with us and that are active globally. In all, Maine's exporting businesses contribute a little bit less than $3 billion to the state's economy each year. That's about 5% of the gross state product. It's about 30% of what we manufacture, however. This is only scratching the surface because that 2.7 on this slide will be at about 2.4, I think, this year. Only scratches the surface because it only accounts for manufactured goods, things that could be put into a box. It does not account for services. It does not account for foreign students paying tuition and spending money in our communities. That's worth about another $100 million as far as we can tell. It also does not account for international tourists, which didn't have a lot of this year, but in a typical year is a substantial contributor to the international economy. In all, trade supports 176,000 jobs in Maine. That's directly and indirectly. So it's not just the people working on the manufacturing floor, it's also the people packing the boxes, it's the people who are moving the boxes, it's the people who are putting them on ships and moving them out of state. It supports about 176,000 jobs, or 1 in 5, and over 2,000 businesses in Maine report making an export sale. I can see you doing the math probably. You know, we work with probably about 300 of them a year. Probably 2,000 of them say that they did something. This is self-reported. It could be that somebody sold something to a Canadian once and decided that they had delusions of grandeur. So take that number with a bit of a grain of salt. Our best estimate is probably about half that, maybe 1,000 companies in Maine that are actively selling globally. 30,000 people in Maine work for a company with international ownership. So it's clearly a significant driver. So we've heard a lot about strategic goals. I'll throw mine out there too. They are simple in concept, yet they're flexible enough for the team to adapt to, shall we say, a volatile international market. I'll present them here in the language of the 2020 statewide economic plan, but they really are foundational to the Trade Center's operations and have been so since the early days. In a minute, I'll get a little bit more into depth on the first two, but we've heard from everybody else today about growing the average annual wage. We're working on that one. We tackle that one through talent development and education, a little bit of a different spin on the workforce development issue. Increasing the value of what we sell. One's pretty obvious. That is the work that we do in developing export and international markets. We are cheerleaders, I would say, on attracting people to Maine's talent pool, with the exception of our Study Maine program, which is, again, trying to bring international students to our educational institutions, to which I've added some management goals of continuous improvement of the quality of our work, trying to create a 21st century organization, and of course, constantly trying to grow and diversify our client base and our revenue streams. We broadly prioritize our work within the framework of the 7 MTI technology clusters, with kind of 3 main factors that drive our emphasis of one over another. One is the relative international strength of the cluster. Frankly, some clusters are just more ready to go global than others. They're more ready to be working with us than others. Some of it is staff experience. Mentioned I have a staff of 10, 5 of them are directly hands-on engaged with the customers and the clients. staff have been asked to or chosen to lead initiatives with several industry sectors, both within the international space and just generally. I'm blessed with a very good, well-developed, well-built out staff that has a lot of depth of knowledge and a lot of good industry connections within Maine, but also nationally and internationally. This international industry knowledge and credibility is vital to our work in making sure that export development and also in our investment attraction activities. And then finally, state economic development goals. Though we do have a measure of independence, we are obviously quite tied to DECD and the work plan that they have laid out. We do work within the economic development structure and are often called upon to engage with other sectors as needed. At the bottom here, you can see the industry sectors that we most often are working with. We're presently prioritizing 9 of them: food, seafood, consumer goods, life sciences, international education, most recently defense, which has kind of grown out of our composites work. The North Atlantic office is working closely with the 4Main Initiative and a couple of other groups on forest and blue bioeconomy development. And then obviously, given the state's recent emphasis on the development of opportunities in clean tech and renewables, this is one that is that we're going to be adding as a 10th. We're still very much in development on that one right now. So how do we work within these sectors towards these goals? Well, first, talent and workforce development. So you've heard a lot about training of frontline workers and manufacturing workers. And again, we're very much cheerleaders on that one. We look at this kind of from 2 perspectives, though. There's the frontline work, which is kind of not within the context of our role in the economic development world. We're very much more in the market development and capacity build side of it. Although the issue of a well-trained and well-equipped frontline workforce obviously has impacts on Maine's ability to be globally competitive. You can have all the sales programs in the world, but if there's nobody there running the machine, that's a problem. As far as direct service, however, for us, our work in this space is generally directed at management and office staff, either executives or VPs of sales and marketing primarily, although some workers that would be frontline, but more in the clerical space, shipping clerks, that sort of thing, to make sure that they have the capacity that they need to be able to do this. We're in the business of teaching those personnel needed skills or making sure that they're connected to needed resources to make them better at what they do. So we deliver those services in 3 different ways. First of it is trade information. Our work centers on providing high quality information to small businesses statewide. 334 companies across Maine were assisted in 2019. That was pretty typical. In 2020, obviously with pandemic, there was a bit of a drop off there, but I think we were still at 305, which tells an interesting story in and of itself, which I'll get to in a moment. We take pride in being a known and trusted resource for thorough answers to trade questions that can range in complexity from a very simple tariff rate inquiry to a full-on market report. Many of these are reactive in scope. You can get a snapshot there of our top markets and our top exports. Educational programming is the second one, and in some ways it's an extension of our trade information services, which is more reactive. This is more proactive. Our Global U education series focuses on a blend of nuts and bolts training as well as more advanced topics. This shift to the virtual environment actually was really good for us because it allowed us to start bringing in speakers from around the world. It certainly simplified the setup and delivery of programs. It resulted in higher attendance numbers and broader participation across the state because we're no longer requiring people to come to our very lovely, you can see the pictures there, offices in downtown Portland, which was great for people from Cumberland County, not so great if you were not in Cumberland County. So this is something that I have, as a Bangor kid, really wanted to make sure that we were coming into this job, reaching out to other parts of the state. This is something that we will be retaining past the pandemic once we're all able to be back together again in person. And then finally, putting our money where our mouth is, since the mid-1990s, our Future Global Leaders internship program has directly contributed to long-term talent development by directly training hundreds of students. You see a bunch of them there from the last probably 3 or 4 years or so, training hundreds of students, creating a global network that was united by their shared experience. Through this pandemic, we were able to keep this program going, allowing students to continue to have this valuable work experience, even with the changed environment. And again, like the programs where we're not requiring students to have to come to Portland to work out of our offices, we were able to draw from other institutions. We had a young woman from Durham, Maine, who was studying at a school in California who was interning with us. We were able to more easily draw from folks attending the University of Maine. That drive down from Orono to be here was just a little bit too long for somebody doing a minimum wage internship for 10 hours a week. So the shift to online, I think, has definitely paid some dividends. Increasing the value of what we sell is the second core strategic goal for us. 2 of our core work areas support this goal, which is export market development. In a typical year, trade shows, admissions, and Invest in Maine, which works on attracting foreign investment to the state. Export market development is defined as an activity by which a Maine business is connected directly to a potential foreign buyer. We undertake our own work on this goal, as well as supporting businesses' own activities through our SBA Export Development Program. Usually, and again, in a typical year, we would organize about 9 overseas activities in a typical year. This is usually a group of anywhere between 4 and 6 small businesses from across the state attending a trade event. That is usually the Medicus trade show, which is for life sciences, that occurs in November in Germany. Fancy Food West, which would be happening right now for small producers of food and beverage. The 3 Seafood Expo shows in Hong Kong, now Barcelona and Boston, and 1 Study Maine student attraction mission. In addition, we support 20 to 30 more businesses that are kind of doing their own thing through the SBA STEP program. Those funds are used to offset costs associated with trade events, booth purchases, hiring marketing consultants or interpreters to be able to make that presence successful. And then finally, our Invest in Maine program, which has been in operation for about 10 years, marketing our economic development assets to a global market. This program has morphed and changed a bit over time. It's currently focusing on composites and advanced materials. It will start to move towards the Forest Bioeconomy Initiative as well, in cooperation with the work of the Maine North Atlantic Development Office. Start to think about wrapping up here. So how did 2020 go? Well, as I mentioned, though I've been in the director's seat for 4 years, or almost 4 years, I've been doing this work for 24. And I will say that this has been the most challenging international trade environment that I've seen since starting my job. That includes the months following 9/11. But that said, despite pandemics and kind of unprecedented challenges, there's been surprising resilience in the internationally active businesses this year. Our leading export product in 2020 continues to be lobster. That is followed by aircraft parts, a variety of machinery, forest products, pharmaceuticals, and other items that are related to the life sciences industry. Our leading trade partner this year is Canada. It's always Canada. It's always going to be Canada by a wide margin. That's followed by China and then by the major markets of Asia and Western Europe. Numbers are down this year, to be sure, but they are not catastrophic. It's more in line with a bad recession. It's not great, but it's much better than what we were fearing in the spring as things were starting to shut down and companies were having real significant issues with supply chain and being able to move products in and out of the state. Exports through November are down about 15% over 2019. This is comparable to a 14% decline as a national average. Our expectation is that we're going to end the year at about 2.4 billion. As I mentioned earlier, we were at 2.7 last year. In April, the World Trade Organization was predicting a 13 to 32% drop in global trade as a result of the pandemic. So we're on the low end of that range, but we're definitely within the range. Looking ahead, and we certainly hope that this prediction is correct, the WTO is predicting a 7% rebound in 2021. Way too early for numbers on that at this point for 2021, but I think that gives you a good picture of where we are or where we were in 2020. I mentioned, though, we expected a slowdown in the work as companies were kind of cut off from their ability to travel, their ability to attend trade events. We expected a work slowdown. And I would say that other than the first few weeks, say from mid-March to mid-April, it never really did. And in that mid-March to mid-April timeline, our team really kind of shifted focus and helped supplement the work that DECD was doing in getting information out to the business community on at that time, really disaster assistance resources. As you see there, we reached out to almost 100 companies in that time frame to talk with them about COVID. The message I gave to my staff as we were going remote was we are going to do what is necessary to support our community, and it may not be our typical work in trying to develop international resources. Manufacturers remained on the job. They stayed working. They were declared essential early. They never stopped processing orders. Businesses were and still are reaching out to our team regularly. They're still interested in developing new markets, though they're doing it in different ways. Virtual trade missions and trade shows now instead of travel, learning how to do search engine optimization and web sales in foreign markets. Many of them knew what they were doing when it came to the US market, but when you start talking about how to do this in China and Germany and Canada, it's a little bit different, to say the least. And redeveloping their strategies for this new reality that really has an uncertain finish line. So many questions about the hows of international trade exist for them within this current environment. And so how do you develop something new without being able to meet in person? And how can businesses manage these kind of real issues of supply chain challenges, restricted air capacity, and high trucking costs? So these are the topics that we're finding ourselves working on with our clients across the state. So looking ahead, we have some exciting initiatives and activities. We're going to collaborate with New Hampshire and Vermont on a regional virtual trade mission to South Korea at the end of March, which will be focused on the defense industry. We're continuing to watch and support the development of the proposed cold storage facility on the Portland waterfront, which will have implications for food and beverage and agricultural companies in Maine and around the region. We're excited to work with the Port Authority on promoting this project because we believe it will have a major impact on market entry efforts. Expanded promotion of our federally funded export development awards. In early summer, we raised the award amounts and lowered the match requirements to get more money into the hands of small businesses that need it. And then finally, a virtual Maine International Trade Day. In a normal year, I would be talking about the wonderful event that we were going to be having in Bangor in May. We'll be moving it online this year to highlight Maine's export economy and promote several businesses across the state that are doing some really great things globally from here. So thanks to all of you for your interest. If we can be of service to you or your constituents, I hope you won't hesitate to reach out to me directly. Much more is available in our annual report on the screen. That includes some videos from client companies talking about how they've leveraged our services for international success. So thank you again for your time. Happy to answer questions from the committee. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much. Let's see. If you could hide the or take down the screen share so we can see each other. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
What questions do we have for Mr. Merritt? Representative Pebworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Merritt. I appreciate that. Just a quick question. Forest and blue bioeconomy, is blue ocean? And if so, why blue, not ocean? And can you give an example or two of that bioeconomy?
Sure. Yeah, blue bioeconomy is ocean, and I didn't name it, unfortunately, so I can't give you a good explanation for that one. That is kind of the term of art, I think, for blue bioeconomy space. But this is a really interesting one for us. So obviously, we've talked a lot, or there's been a lot of conversation around and the commissioner actually talked about the work that they're doing in the forest economy. The blue bioeconomy looks at how can we find alternative uses for the ocean resource. And that looks at things like the work that the New England Ocean Cluster House is doing down here on the Portland waterfront. How do you use lobster shells in a different way? How do you offtake some of the waste streams to be able to make different products? A lot of that work has been modeled on some things that we've seen in Iceland with the Iceland Ocean Cluster House, where they were able to increase the value of a cod from $7 a pound for meat and throw everything else away to $50 or $60 a pound a fish, because you were able to use the bones to make collagen, and you were able to use the scales to make you were able to use the skin to make leather. The idea of that in Maine is how else can you use things like lobsters? How else would include things like tidal energy and wave energy? Really, how else can we use the resource in ways that that we haven't used it before? It's very much at the beginning of it. That's why I'm being a bit circumspect. But it is it's very exciting. We've learned a lot from what the Icelandics have been doing with it, and our partners in the North Atlantic think that it's got some really good application here. Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other questions. Are there any other questions from the members? Mr. Merritt, I do have one question. In your transition to supporting businesses in the COVID-19, what have you learned in terms of how to do business? What's been your pivot and lesson about, and also how it might be moving forward?
Well, I think this pivot to the virtual environment was big, and it's interesting because I think I heard on a webcast early on in all of this was that this was going to drive a transformation, a technological transformation that in some ways was coming that we hadn't made the leap to. Our pivot definitely was, well, our first learning was how resilient the sector was, that they, like I said at the beginning, in my conclusion here, that we were expecting that that we were going to go through a couple of months of not hearing from our customers, and when we were hearing from them, that it was going to be, tragic. We're losing our business, and how can you help? So quickly we saw that there was a great deal of resilience in the sector. For what we've done, for a long time, one of the things that I've kind of recognized as something that I would like to see changed about our organization is how do we address communities outside of Cumberland County? And I saw a few smiles around the table, and I mentioned, as a Bangor kid, we want to make sure that we're reaching all of those parts of the state. And a lot of that was in how do we adopt technology to be able to counsel businesses remotely, but also how can we use technology to bring a company into contact with a willing buyer on the international side of the equation. So we undertook several of those. We just did a virtual version of the Boston Seafood Show. We had 6 sellers of live lobster that met with buyers from 18 different markets, basically from their kitchen tables, and sold $2.5 million worth of lobster from it. We've had 3 overseas events with our Study Maine program, where we've been able to bring directors of admissions from private high schools across Maine into contact with students and parents to do the actual interviews and try to attract them to come to Maine. And as I mentioned, we've got this virtual defense show coming up in March. So it's been very exciting and interesting. And I should also mention we did a forest bioeconomy mission to Finland in late summer that attracted a couple hundred attendees from Maine and Finland, and we were able to do business-to-business matchmaking for 17 companies across the state. So it is a very interesting technology adoption that, you know, I'm sure we would have gotten to, but the necessity of kind of driving this really moved it along. And I think too, it will be a positive for all of us moving forward.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Representative Austin. Representative Austin. Let's see. Has to unmute. I think you're still muted. Try that again. There you go. Oh, one more time. You're still muted.
It will not work.
You are unmuted now. You're good now.
Okay. Mr. Merritt, how are you?
Very well, Representative Austin. Very nice to see you again.
Thank you very much. I'm so tickled you brought up the international studies. I was going to ask that question and I thought, oh, during a COVID challenge, that's a silly question. But I know how much we have talked over the years about that connector for the families to come and have their students here. Is there anything more you can kind of bring us up a little more up to date on that? And what do you foresee for, let's hope, the new year, school year in the fall next year? All right, where are we at right now? Are there any here in some of the private institutions that have maybe stayed open?
Yeah, there were a few, and obviously that was something that we were paying attention to, especially at the beginning, because there were a lot of kids who were here, and then the question was, could they come back if they left? I don't have good numbers on that. I wish I did. As you were asking me the question, I'm like, I should have had that one, but I'll get you some information on it. I know that some did. I actually saw one that that went and quarantined in a third country so that they were able to bring their students back with them, which I thought was kind of an interesting way of approaching it. This is an important revenue stream for a lot, especially of the private high schools. So there was some serious concern, especially when you start talking about some of these schools in more rural communities. We could go down this road a bit. I mean, there are 10 public-private high schools in Maine, the town academies, that are able to have private pay students. That's, you know, Thornton Academy, Lee Academy, Washington Academy. As I said, there are 10 of them. The reality of how Thornton Academy interacts with its international students in Saco versus how Lee Academy interacts with its international students in Lee, as opposed to, from the perspective of the relative dependence on those tuition dollars to keep the school open, is one that we're obviously paying very close attention to. So Representative Austin, I will get you some numbers. I'm very curious about that myself. I know that they are here. I suspect the numbers are probably smaller. In a typical year, we're talking about 2,000 students across the state with about $100 million economic impact. That is not insignificant. I will check on that for you, though, because I would like to know the answer to that question myself.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Nice to see you.
See you too.
Representative Bailey.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to say thank you for the great presentation, and I also appreciate the great website that you guys have and the resources that you provide for folks who are, you know, looking for information. There's a lot of content on the website, especially for folks who are trying to navigate their way through. Mm-hmm. And I also, having FlowFold in my district, really appreciate the collaboration with that really exceptional Maine company, doing some really cool things and collaborating with LL Bean and others. So thanks for that work. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Yes, it's a great cluster out there in that industrial park. We also have a long-term relationship with Montalvo and a number of others out there. We actually did a piece for our newsletter. We're doing a series on community-based profiles on international, and one of them was for Gorham Westbrook. I'll make sure you get a copy of that so you can chance to see that.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. It looks like we've exhausted our questions, and I really appreciate your presentation. It was quite educational.
All right. Well, thank you, Senator. Appreciate it. Have a good afternoon, everybody.
You too. Our last presentation for the day is from the Maine Technology Institute and Brian Whitney. Brian, welcome. Welcome to the Innovation Development, Economic Advancement and Business Committee. So I'll give you the floor. Are you looking to share, do some screen sharing?
I am, thanks.
We'll make sure that you have access to that, and go ahead.
Everybody see that? Can everybody see the?
Yes, you're in presentation mode.
Great. Well, Senator, Representative Roberts, and esteemed members of the IDEA Committee, as was noted, my name's Brian Whitney. I'm president of the Maine Technology Institute. First off, I want to say tremendous job on the agenda. I mean, I can't believe it's 3:35. We're starting right on time after all the presentations you've had today. So excellent job moving through the material in such a quick fashion. So thank you for that. MTI, for those who may not be well acquainted, is our state-funded public-private partnership that helps drive innovation in the state of Maine. I'll provide a brief overview here, some slides in this deck, and we'll try to move through them quickly. But just before I start, I want to say congratulations to all of you on your election or re-election to the legislature and your appointment to this committee. Your commitment to public service and to growing Maine's economy is deeply appreciated by me. So thanks for all the work that you're doing and you're going to do this year. This slide just provides you a quick overview of some of the topics I'm going to touch on. So when I introduce MTI during presentations, I like to start with this slide by Steve Case. It's from a book he wrote about 5 years ago called The Third Wave. And Steve Case, as you probably know, was co-founder of America Online, which I don't know about you, but was my first email address. Case served as CEO when the company was valued at $163 billion. It had over 22 million subscribers, was the top performing stock of the 90s, and was worth more than General Motors and Ford combined. And the reason I use this quote to open presentations is because it's really emblematic of the role that MTI plays in Maine's economy. It notes that government is the one that typically defines, either through action or inaction, the environment in which entrepreneurship exists. At worst, it can be a hindrance, but at best, government can create an environment where innovation and entrepreneurship can thrive, not by providing the certainty of success, but by mitigating risk and expanding the scale of opportunity. MTI really embodies that quote, because we're here to help entrepreneurs and companies mitigate risk. Case goes on to talk about how companies like Apple and Intel and Qualcomm all benefited from federal SBA loan guarantees, and the basis for Google's search algorithm was actually funded from federal R&D funds. So government can and has played a significant role in entrepreneurship and startups. So MTI is Maine's industry-led, publicly funded nonprofit corporation. We offer early stage capital and commercialization assistance in the form of grants, loans, and equity investments, as well as entrepreneurial guidance and mentorship to achieve our core mission. And our core mission is to help diversify and grow Maine's economy by encouraging, promoting, stimulating, and supporting innovation and its transformation into new products, new processes, new Maine companies, and ultimately helping to create quality jobs for Mainers. As you all are well aware, Mainers have always been really clever and resourceful and creative. We even have a name for it here. It's Yankee ingenuity. So MTI helps foster and facilitate that creativity by funding innovations developed by Maine inventors in garages, all the way up to large public companies, world-renowned research organizations, and academic institutions. MTI was created by the legislature and governor in 1999. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary a year ago, October. MTI's creation was largely driven by the work of some targeted legislative initiatives back in the late 90s. In 1997, the 118th legislature created a joint select committee on R&D to review current policies and programs within the state to support applied research and development. That committee was followed by the comprehensive work of the 119th Joint Select Committee on Research and Development, and they helped create the framework for Maine's research and development programs and excuse me, and designated that those initiatives ought to focus Maine's investments on 7 targeted technology sectors. And as you heard from Wade, those sectors are enumerated in statute and are adhered to by a number of different organizations like the Trade Center, the Venture Fund, MTI. So the legislation for MTI was created in '99, and I still view it as a really inspired and visionary piece of legislation. Over the past 20 years, MTI, working with its partners across the state, has focused our efforts on helping to diversify and grow Maine's economy through investments in those 7 targeted technology sectors. Today, MTI remains the state's only source of private sector focused R&D financing, leading to new products and services, job creation, and other economic benefits. And as you can see from this second bullet here, over the past 20 years, we've dispersed over $280 million across more than 2,950 distinct projects. And that funding has helped leverage over $1 billion in private sector matching funds. So here's a brief chronological history of MTI and the projects, the number of projects we've funded, the amount of money we've dispersed. This talks a little bit about the impacts associated with these MTI seed investments and commercialization investments, helping with job creation, revenue acceleration, increased property values, added product line development, and so on. So MTI supports innovations and entrepreneurs and companies that share our goals. And those goals are the creation or retention of quality jobs, the growth and acceleration of revenues, and the attraction and leveraging of additional investments. So MTI, as I noted, match is a big thing with us, and we're required to generate at least $1 in matching funds for every dollar we put out the door. So we're always looking to leverage those state resources with outside capital. So MTI structure, as I mentioned at the outset, we're an industry-led organization. We're governed by a board of 15 members, and 10 of those 15 members are private sector representatives appointed by the governor. Those 10 members, 8 of them represent the 7 targeted technology sectors. Don't ask me why there weren't 7 representing the 7 sectors, but for whatever reason, the statute has 8 members representing 7 sectors. So we do have some crossover in one of those sectors. And then there are also 2 members who have finance or venture capital experience. And then the remaining 5 members are public members, including myself, Commissioner Johnson, and designees of the university system, community college system, and the Office of Innovation Policy in the future. Another way that we are industry-led is through the use of subject matter experts in our targeted technology boards. So each of those 7 targeted technology sectors has their own board. And that board, all of those boards are made up of subject matter experts in those fields. And those folks volunteer their time to MTI to help review proposals for technical merit. And it's been a really symbiotic relationship. And as Wade noted to you in his presentation, I too am an employee of the Maine Department of Economic and Community Development. Like Wade, answer to a number of different bosses. As an appointee of the governor, I answer to her. I also answer to Heather Johnson as commissioner of the department. And oh, by the way, answer to this 15-person board of directors. Wade talked a little bit about Mitzi's COVID response. MTI, obviously, like everybody else, had to implement some operational changes in mid-March that included altering our funding and review process to ensure that we were able to meet the needs of our clients and the innovation ecosystem as a whole. Fortunately, we had some experience with remote working arrangements. We typically allowed employees to work remotely on Fridays. So we were prepared to move into that full time as soon as mid-March. So that happened seamlessly. But we also altered our funding process to be more responsive to the companies in our portfolio and those seeking funding. So we liberally offered loan deferments and restructures to existing companies, and we expedited decisioning to make sure that folks with COVID mitigation solutions could get those to market quickly. And this slide doesn't note it, but we had companies within our portfolio that really made some amazing operational pivots in response to the pandemic. One of those was Flowfold that shifted their production to make personal protective equipment. Others made hand sanitizer. One of our companies made toilet paper, which, as we all know, was a highly sought after commodity there for a while. And one of our companies that makes innovative modular wall systems pivoted their production to use these wall systems to help hospitals create isolation areas and increase capacity. So that was another really important pivot. And I'll talk a little bit more about those companies in detail later. So in terms of funding, MTI funded this past fiscal year, we put $9.6 million to work. And for some context, MTI, as you know, gets a straight appropriation each year. We get about $6.5 million from the state of Maine to deploy. We're allowed to use 10% of that for admin, so to pay for our staff and rent and keep the lights on. That leaves us with about $5.8 million to disperse to businesses. This past fiscal year, as I noted, we put $9.6 million to work, and that's largely due to loan repayments, investment returns that we just recycled and put back to work. Matching funds, as I mentioned earlier, is a critical component of our MTI portfolio. As you can see here, there's some year-over-year comparisons between amount of funding deployed and amount of match that we leveraged. And you can see that we've done better over the last couple of years, significantly better than we had previously. I do want to say that the 2018 numbers there are a bit of an anomaly. That was a year that we had $45 million in R&D bond funding to deploy. So that $5.5 million in total dollars awarded was only due to our core funding program. We also put an additional $46 million to work that year through that R&D bond fund called Maine Technology Asset Fund. This gives you a sense of how we deployed our funds during the past year. As I mentioned, we altered our funding programs in mid-March to make sure that we could be responsive to our companies during the pandemic. And as you can see from this chart, MTI was able to award approximately half of our money in the final 4 months of the fiscal year to make sure that companies had the resources they need to continue to provide jobs, quality jobs for Maine people. So we put $4.67 million to work from March through the end of June to help companies, and our funding that just those 4 months leveraged an additional $22 million in private sector matching funds. So I think our own internal pivot to make sure we were altering our funding processes to be more nimble paid dividends. Here's a chart that illustrates the sectors and the amount of investment that we put into each of the sectors this past fiscal year. It's encouraging to see that aquaculture and marine investments led the way for us, and they were followed closely by investments in information technology and biotech. Traditionally, information technology is the sector we see the most activity in. So it was nice to see it eclipsed by aquaculture and marine and the great interest that we've seen in those sectors. This gives you a sense of our awards by range. When MTI developed its new strategic plan a few years ago, we determined that we were willing to take more risk with smaller dollar amounts and less risk with larger dollar amounts. So this illustrates our awards by range. Range 1 is 25,000 or less. Range 2 is 100,000 or less. Range 3 is 100,000 to 250, and range 4 is 250 or more, just to give you a sense of the scale of the investments we were making. As I mentioned, in 2018, we had a $45 million bond to deploy. That bond funding was fully awarded in 2018, but one of the companies actually forfeited their award. So we had about $2 million left to redeploy. So we ran a solicitation this year and had a $2 million solicitation, and we sought applications for that funding, and we capped proposals at $500,000. We received 84 proposals seeking in total $25 million for the $2 million in available funds. The proposals came in from almost every county and from some out-of-state entities that were interested in MTI funding. We ultimately made 10 awards, just over $2 million, and that funding leveraged almost $32 million. 1,600 jobs will be created or retained as a result. MTI also administers other bond funds. This just gives you an example of some that are still under active management. There's a number of success stories in the deck. I'm not going to go through each of them, but there's one in particular I wanted to point out, and it's this one, Stark Systems. This is the modular wall manufacturer I was referencing. This is a really good example of MTI impact. The founders actually met at an MTI networking event. They sought MTI funding to develop proof of concept work, prototype development of their modular walls. We helped them get some funding to commercialize the wall panels. And then we provided follow-on funding to help them scale. And it's just been a tremendous company. It was born out of the Tech Place incubator at Brunswick Landing. And that's a incubator that we helped provide a great deal of funding to over the years. MTI statute also calls for us to make sure there's a complementary system of support for entrepreneurs in the state of Maine. So we work with all of the folks on this page to make sure that entrepreneurs are receiving the type of care and nurturing that they need to grow their enterprises. We have MOUs with a number of these organizations. We provide funding to a bunch. We've helped get a number of initiatives off the ground through our seed funding, and we have a really tightly woven network now helping entrepreneurs in the state. So I think I ran over, I blew up your agenda, and I apologize for that, but that's the end of the presentation. I'll take any questions you have.
Well, thank you very much for presenting. And you did not blow up the agenda by much, so no worries there. We have time for questions, and I see I call Representative Pebworth.
Thank you so much. I wondered if you could talk a little bit more about how leveraging additional monies works for MTI.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, our statute requires that the folks that we fund have some skin in the game. So they have to put $1 in for every dollar that we're willing to invest. We're generally looking for a lot more than that. So typically with some of the early stage companies, that money takes the form of, friends and family and foolhardy individuals who invest in their ideas. Eventually, they may be able to access some equity and venture capital, federal R&D funds. That's another thing we help folks attain. As you can imagine, seeking federal R&D funding is not a simple process. So we actually provide technical assistance to companies and entrepreneurs interested in trying to access the $3.7 billion that are available each year from the feds. And we provide that as a free service to anybody who's interested. So that's how we try to maximize leverage of our investment.
Other questions? Mr. Whitney, if I were looking to dive in further, is there an annual report or website? Some of the things you said were I had more questions, but I knew they were going to be kind of long answers, and so I'd like to be able to read more. Where would you direct me?
Yeah, mainetechnology.org is our website. It has all of our annual reports. I've actually got some, I transmitted an electronic copy to the committee staff, but I do have hard copies I'll get in the mail to each of you, so you'll have them at your homes. But there's a lot of good resources on our website about, are you a fit for MTI? What's our process look like? How do you seek our money? And, what can you expect once you apply? How long will it take? All those kind of things. So, but there's also a number of annual impact reports on there that you can review, and I'm happy to follow up via email or telephone with any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. And I don't see any further questions. Clerk is asking a question. Go ahead, Ms. Breton.
Yes. Mr. Whitney, could you send 3 copies to the State House, one for the Oprah analyst, one for the master file, and one that I can file with the law library, please?
Will do, Jody.
Thank you.
Thank you for that reminder. So, well, with that, that is the end of our scheduled session for today. Mr. Whitney, thank you very much for presenting and giving us this education and briefing. So,
congrats again for keeping things right on track. It's an excellent job of chairing.
Well, it takes all of us. Mostly it takes people reminding me to unmute my mic. So.
Well, thanks again.
With that, we will adjourn. And
Representative Austin, did you have a question for Mr. Whitney or for the committee?
Representative Austin? There you are. Oh.
Cannot get this. Okay. Mr. Whitney.
Hi. How
are you? I've been pushing and pushing on this thing I just wanted to ask you, it's funny that you happen to mention stock because unfortunately, having had some opportunities to visit a couple of hospitals over the last year, every time I go in there and I see some, let's call it reconstruction or remodeling or even just interior work, I think of them and I remember the presentation that we had seen. But you mentioned their ability to kind of react to some of this COVID challenge. And would you, I think out of a terribly sad and tragic and very challenging situation, it's been wonderful to see some of our main companies be so responsive and have such a big play in the whole action to responding to needs. So can you give us a little more on maybe what they've been able to do in some of the different hospitals during this whole challenge or not?
Yeah, that's a great question, Representative. Thanks for asking it. What we found is, a lot of these tech-based economic development entities like Stark and like the companies in MTI's portfolio were remarkably resilient during the pandemic and were able to seize on some of the market opportunities that existed. Stark in particular, helping out in the healthcare industry, and I don't have numbers, but I can get them from the company. But, they were just so busy that they couldn't, hire people fast enough, couldn't get product out the door. Just, a tremendous example of a stellar startup in Maine's innovation ecosystem. And like I said, it's been a company that's benefited from a number of our partners, growing in Tech Place, graduating from Tech Place, benefiting from MTI funding, and a whole host of different resources. Just a really gratifying example.
The thing that I remembered clearly is that you mentioned Brunswick Landing, but prior to that, didn't they actually start in just a two-bay garage?
They may have. Yeah, you're probably right.
I think that's what they shared at one point. And I thought, you talk about a success. There you have it, the Maine ingenuity, Yankee ingenuity. And I remember them clearly and applauding them now to be able to do all this work. So thank you for mentioning them.
Oh yeah, no, it's so true. And Representative Austin's referencing a presentation that Stark gave at MTI's 20th anniversary a year ago, where one of the founders talked about how they benefited from all of the incentives and the ecosystem partners. So great story.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing it. So having no other business before us today, we will adjourn. So thank you very much.
Why is this having such trouble? Come on.
Ms. Breton, do you need anything to do in order to close off the meeting, to close it for everyone?
No, I can just, once I hit stop the live stream, I'll just close it right down. I
Okay.
just want to make sure that everybody's able to get off
Okay.
without any problems.
Representative Austin, do you need any assistance in leaving the meeting?
Nope.
Excellent. Okay. And go ahead, Jody, go ahead and